Well, Michael, maybe for a lot of our listeners that can wrap their brain around being a illustrator, but maybe can you tell us the difference between an illustrator versus a storyboard artist and maybe even a concept artist? And aren't they all utilized by the film industry, all three of those, illustrator, storyboard artist, and concept artist? Could you tell us a little bit the difference between those three?
Yes, absolutely. They are distinct. Well, I would say an illustrator is within the same kind of sphere as a concept artist. It's actually very similar to the same thing. What you're doing is you're just pre-visualizing the world and like objects in the world, like say props or costumes or vehicles or, set dressings. This is what illustration and concept art is in film. Storyboarding is, yes, you're technically illustrating, but really that exists within like the script and directing sphere and the DP, which is the director of photography. It's very much more nestled in that sphere of creation, because what you're doing is you're helping the director interpret the script into the visual medium. And by that, I mean like editing, like you're setting the pace, you're finding all the camera angles, and you're telling the story sequentially. While illustration, these are just big static, beautiful paintings of like the tone and the look and the lighting. The storyboards are generally more raw, more sketchier, more simplified. But there's a volume of them, right? There's many, many, many storyboards for each scene.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, the storyboard artist puts the sequential order of that particular scene. And is that done because the director needs to see it visually to make sure that makes sense the way it looks like frame by frame before they actually passes that information on to the actor? Is that why? Or is it for the actors to actually look at the storyboard so they know how they need to move?
It's actually a very long question for many different departments. Okay. So for one, it's for the director himself or herself or themselves, basically to plan out all the camera angles that they want, how many shots they're going to need, how many setups they're going to need. Setup is when you're changing all the lighting on your location. They use it to communicate to the VFX where they have to green screen, where the stun guy is going to be, when the car explodes. They also have to communicate it to the actors. Yes, that's very helpful for actors as well. They can learn their marks. They know kind of what angles they're going to be shot from. It's very helpful to the producers, probably the most, because they can look at that and see if it's over budget. Because like instead of just showing up with no preparation, you're going to show up with cameras and like all this crew, hundreds of people, food trucks. You have all the lighting gear. It's very expensive. So to have it all kind of tight and planned out on this stage where you're just seeing it as a series of drawings edited together, even in a reel, you can easily calculate how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take to shoot it, and all the logistics needed to accomplish to the goal. So that's kind of where storyboards really shine. They're really for budgeting or the time needed, the time budget, basically. But on top of that, they can also be very artistic. They can be used to pitch bigger ideas. Like say you have a small idea, or the consensus is a smaller scene. But if you do some like really awesome storyboards that sell something bigger, you can convince people, right? Oh, well, if it's going to look like that, maybe we should put more money into that, because that will really sell that scene, and really that could maybe just sell the entire film, or that could sell the entire episode of the show. You know what I mean? They're a good persuasion tool. That's why they're used in advertising so much as well.
Let me ask you this question, and this is just from my own experiences between the difference between the illustrator, storyboard artist, and concept artist. And tell me if I'm right. And I'm not going to dive into storyboard because you answered that perfectly. So in my mind, I think an illustrator, in many ways, and this is just limiting, but I tend to think of an illustrator as somebody who can make the final polished product. Maybe a cover for a video game or a comic book cover, something that is that takes a lot of hours to perfect. That's what Illustrator does. And I think of a concept artist as somebody that, let's just take a movie, right? Maybe the intro scene of Star Wars, that environment. You might have a concept artist just draw many renditions of the environment over and over again until the decision maker says, I love that. It's down to the costumes. Do me 15 versions of that costume until I say, yes, that's the one I want. So a concept artist does a lot of their concepting. They're doing a lot of ideas. They're not worried about the polished final product. So that's how I think of the difference between that and and then Storyboard Artist. You obviously did a perfect job explaining that. Am I understanding those three correctly? Did I interpret that right? To listen to our full episode of the Creative Brick Road podcast, we can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. And please hit the subscribe button for our YouTube channel.